What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Saturnus, we are here with Brian, we are here with Tina, and we are here with Indy. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Yeah, I had to bring that up.
Something I hadn't told anything. I haven't told quite the truth yet, but my real name is Tina.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what the purpose of this channel is, to make the truth about heavy metal and, you know, get everything involved. So it's great to meet you, Thomas. I mean, Tina. Sorry.
Yeah. My pleasure. My pleasure.
But it's so awesome to have you guys here. Thank you for some amazing new music. The Storm Within is an absolute masterpiece, and I'm so glad it is finally out for the rest of the world to hear it. Being that this is the first Saturnus album to come out since Saturn in Ascension since 2012, I mean, I was in high school when the last one came out. So what was the sort of mindset behind the making of this record? Was it just meant to be kind of a continuation or picking up where you left off? Or was this meant to be like a new beginning with, you know, Indie U coming on board and whatnot?
It was kind of both, because it's as you say yourself, it's like a continuation from the last one, because we're still here and it's like continuation, but it's also like how can I say, a new beginning, because we have the new members. So it's a mix of both, and also like the whole theme surrounding the album with the title and also with the lyrics. It tells a lot of stories from the past, with all the storms we have had within the band, and so it's 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was it like at all sort of like a preconceived vision in a way with the stories that were spoken in here? Was it, were you almost kind of looking at Saturn Ascension or Veronica Decides to Die or Martyr and being like, okay, this is how we have to go? Or were you all maybe kind of like trying to step musically into uncharted territory, maybe like experiment with your sound a little bit?
Yeah, of course, it's always interesting to like experiment and step into other territories. And I think we have also managed this on this album, especially with the more, how can I say, popish approach in some of the things. But we have not had those discussions that we needed to sound like Saturn and Ascension or Veronica Decides to Die, or even take the time further back. It's like Indy and Julio has just like solved the task in their own way and doing their stuff to the band, because they've already know the band from the beginning and know what it all was about. So we have not like have those long deep discussions about how we needed it to sound like. Of course, we have all those trademarks within the music with the melody lines from the guitar and the keyboards and the spoken words and solos from the also and also we try to incorporate some kind of a ballad on every album as well. So you can say all those like 4 or 5 trademarks we have on kind of every album that we have accomplished on this one as well. But that is what's actually kind of the only guidelines we had music wise. Actually, we hadn't like have the long discussions about in which direction. It was just the normal progression, how it all turned out to be with our meetings on the composing time. We had those weekly meetings where we met up and discussed different things and sending files forth and back, and that is actually how the album was developed. Yeah. That was many questions in one. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, I'm glad. The more you talk, the more you all talk, the better. Nothing is worse for an interviewer than being like 2 minutes into the interview and I'm already asking like my 5th or 6th question. So I appreciate it.
Oh, just ask me all the questions and we'll be here forever.
Well, indeed, the next question I do have actually is for you, because being that this is your first contribution to Saturnus, were you kind of looking at the previous albums being like, this is how I have to play, this is the guitar tone that's needed? Or given your history with Reverse the Sun and Clouds and Eye of Solitude, were you kind of allowed to maybe bring a little bit of your own mix into the band?
Well, I think when anyone comes into a project that has such a lineage, such a history that's really deep, and it has a presence within the community as well, I guess you have to honor certain kind of ways of arrangement or stuff like that, or think of it from a certain point of view. But there was never any restrictions on kind of, okay, it has to sound like this or it has to sound like that. Like Thomas said, I've known the band for a long time, but I've known the people in the band for quite a while as well. And I think that's probably what helped a bit more as well, because just sitting down, talking to everyone about it, and kind of approaching it from, okay, we know this is what we sound like. And I think this is the good way of putting it. When Thomas said that, we actually went through the writing sessions, like the online writing sessions, because this was written through the pandemic period. What we did was we actually went through and kind of go, okay, first thing in here, does it feel like Saturnus? Does this actually hit the point where we as a group of people are happy? And if we all unanimously said yes, or we said yes, but maybe tweak this, or that's what basically my check mark was for. Mm-hmm. So I knew kind of generally the guitar has to have its own voice. Mm-hmm. The lead lines have to tell a story in themselves. It has to almost be its own kind of vocalist in a way, you know, has to raise and drop sections. It's a very important part, but not just that. It's listening back and going, okay, what does the past material say to me, and what do I feel is a fresh approach to what I've already been witness to, and have been playing for a little while. Mm. Yeah. So that's kind of how I approached it.
Yeah. And Brian, having not just Indy, but having two new guitar players in the band with Julio and Indy as well, did that maybe open up new ideas to your bass tone in a way? Because when I listen to like the grooves in your bass tone, I feel like it is a very integral part of Saturnus as well. Like I feel like the way I listen to, you know, the rhythmic contributions when you open up with the Storm Within, yeah, and going into Chasing Ghosts and then the Calling, it really seems like the bass really is almost kind of like the river that flows underneath all these elements. So did working with new guitar players open up on how you approach your instrument?
Yeah, it's kind of a both actually, but Thomas said to me, especially in this record here, Brian, you have to come on and do some stuff and be more inspirational, and I yeah, and I got some inspiration off Indy and Julio of the guitar play, and I say, okay, maybe we could do this instead of just saying boom all the time, and just make some more melodies on the bass, and that was a factor there. So
yeah, because you know, in the world of rock and roll, we've all heard our fair share of terrible bass player jokes and terrible bass player memes and whatnot. It comes with the job. But you know, being that it has such an emphasis on rhythm and melody, I was curious to how you approach it, because like, do you need guitar tone or rhythmic first, or have you ever throughout Saturnus's longevity maybe had like a whole bass pattern that the band could write over?
I've been a really just straight kind of bass guy, just pounding away, but in this record here I was just a little but I don't know, challenged because of the main riffs, the melodies was so catchy, so I was trying to make some more catchy bass sound also over the guitar. It's like Closing the Circle, when what all the David Gilmour stuff, that was good to make some more bass lines over in this lead. Mm. So it's kind of matches really good.
Mm. Yeah. Now, I wanted to discuss a little bit about the lyrics, Tomas, because I've always wondered if, like, was the music always approached from a conceptual standpoint? Like, for instance, Veronica Decides to Die, which I don't know if this was the intention. It's one of my all-time favorite books, and it is also the film based off of one of my favorite book-based movies in a way. It's just really a relatable and compelling story in a way. So on a lyrical approach, is it always coming from an internal emotional standpoint, because the music is very emotional as well, or is there a lot of external sources of inspiration for how you approach the lyrical ideas?
I see that. I can talk a little bit about the Veronica thing. Veronica is not a concept album. It's like you should compare it like a soundtrack to the book. But if you read the lyrics, I think many of the thoughts that Veronica had in her head during her period, not period, but yeah, you know.
Yeah, of course. I know what you mean.
That sounded wrong. I know. Sorry. Yeah. So it's kind of not done with a goal, but you just use it as a soundtrack, and the title Veronica Decides to Die is actually just a tribute to the book. Okay. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with the book at all, but we used the book's story for an inspiration. and the lyrics on that album is also really personal for Peter, which is the one that is mostly responsible for the lyrics on Veronica. So yeah, it's a mix between a soundtrack and also inspiration from the book.
Depending on what the context or the subject matter is, does that resonate with you differently when you execute this material and when you revisit it? Does it resonate with you if it's more personal versus more of like an external source coming from literature or film or art in a way?
For me personally, I don't think too much about what the lyrics is about when we perform, because for me the lyrics is just words. Kind of, I more think of myself as an instrument, and I kind of like when I look at the words, I don't think too much about what they are about. I'm more think about how they sound when I sing. Of course, it's important that in the end it makes sense, all the words put together. So we just don't put in like how can I see random words that sounds good, but for me it's more like I think of myself as an instrument, and I'm not actually thinking I'm not having kind of a film or a movie going on in my head, like showing pictures of what kinds of emotions I get when I sing the lyrics, because I'm just a part of the band as the guitar or the bass or whatever. So it's for me it's just like a kind of an instrument, and I use the words in the artistic way,
Yeah, you.
which I also have for kind of my own trademarks in different words. I've used the same way of pronouncing things since the first album, and so if you deep dig into it, and maybe if you're a hardcore fan, you will discover that many of my pronunciations has become the same through. So it's more like an instrument.
Could though maybe a lyrical idea this could go for Indian Brian? Has there ever been a time throughout the band's career where maybe like a lyrical idea or maybe a concept or any just an emotion maybe guided how you approached your hand with regards to the music in a way? Like, could maybe a subject matter guide your hand with regards to how the music will sound?
No, I was also with our previous guitarists. I was just leaning up against them, Kim and yeah, Thijs and those guys. And I was just trying to figure out what could be the most best bass on this riff. So that's basically it.
Yeah. And India for your guitar playing, because you know, the music I consider like, you know, I feel like Saturnus has a sound where like you have the best of both worlds. I feel like, you know, I could tell if you played me 30 seconds of a song what will be off of Veronica Decides to Die or Saturn Ascension, Storm Within, etc. But you also, you could, even though every record stands out, I think every fan could also appreciate every album because it sounds like a Saturnus album. I feel like you have both an experimental sound but a signature sound at the same time. For you, Indy, were you almost kind of like maybe experimenting with your guitar tone in a way? Were you bringing in different effects? Did every song call for its own approach? Or was there a specific methodology or a riffing style that just applied to every single song on the album?
So okay, for the leads, in terms of lead playing, I think I wanted to have a baseline tone that basically sounded like me for once, because I'm playing a lead guitarist in this role, so obviously the narcissism kicks in heavy. So obviously I wanted to have my own signature sound. That's the one thing I wanted it to sound like. Okay, it sounds like me, and it sounds recognizable to me as in when I'm listening to myself, but it also needs to fit into the grand sphere, the sonic playground that is Saturnus. So that's one thing. But in terms of effects and all that sort of stuff, it's the usual scatterings of reverb and delay and all of that sort of stuff. And when Fleming Rasmussen, he got the parts as well, and we were sitting together, we kind of had the same mindset on how things should be approached. But I wanted things to sound, I think in this record, I had an idea for a very rich sounding rhythm section. So the rhythm guitars were a main component in my head for bringing this kind of wall of sound kind of feeling alongside the pads, the orchestration, all that sort of stuff. I wanted it to sound like a statement. When that first chord hits, it hits. But when you hear the leads, I wanted it to sound almost soothing at points, where it calms things down and brings things back and binds them together. So there was that kind of element. I wanted it to sound strong, but also at the same time from a lead point where you could hear the melodies, recite them, and they were something memorable amongst the wall of sound kind of idea. Yeah.
Now,
but in terms of effects and all that sort of stuff, that was basically song by song basis. It was what needs more, what needs less, and there was a general idea of, okay, we'll use what we need to. It was what the song called for, basically.
Of course. Now, I do need to ask this because this year technically does mark 30 years of Saturnus. It's a big year. I mean, it's the same age as me. I'm also turning 30 this year. So,
congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You got version 3.0.
Yep, you guys got it. You guys got to play my birthday show. I do want to ask. I do want to ask though, because starting in 1993. It was a great year, I would say, or a great time in Europe for, the style of melodic death metal and doom and all that with, the rise of, the Catatonias, Paradise Losses, My Dying Brides, Anathemas, and whatnot. But first thing, we'll get this sort of like question out of the way first before we really go down, turn back the clock. Could there maybe be like a celebration of Paradise Belongs to You or something like that? Even though it came out in 97, could we maybe get a celebration of that debut or something like that?
Yeah, we have had those talks on different albums. Like when this album turns something like 25 or whatever, we've been like discussing that it could be interesting to like do some kind of celebration and play it all from start to finish, or whatever. And we've also talked about doing this 30-year anniversary thing, like maybe do an extended show, do some extended shows, maybe a shorter tour, and playing many of the old songs that we haven't played for. It's kind of like, how can I say, the same role of songs we play, because there is a demand from the fans that what songs they want to hear, and we want to please as much as possible. But we would also like to like please ourselves and try to play songs that we haven't played for a long time. But I can say a 30-year anniversary tour this year, that will not happen. So maybe we will try to like kind of extend it 1 year, because I think we can always kind of find an excuse that the corona has like extended the world for 2 years. So maybe we can extend our 30-year anniversary another 2 years as well.
Yeah.
But yes, we have talked about doing special things. So, but nobody knows what will happen. We don't have anything planned now, but it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
To do those kinds of things, because when we had our 20-year anniversary, we had a show for like 3 hours and 20 minutes, I think. Yeah, and we played like songs that hasn't been played since '94, or something that is not released on any full album, only on compilations in Denmark. And we took it and we had like kind of a middle part with a long acoustic things, where we played all the acoustic songs, Fall of Nakiel, For Your Demons, and Thou Art Free, and we had In Your Shining Eyes, and all those acoustic ones, and then continued again with the greatest hits for a long concert.
It was a long night.
Yeah, it was.
Hey, I mean,
it was fun.
I mean, 3.5 hours, that's the average length of a Tool song. So, like, I mean, that's impressive. So, but you put the prog bands to shame that night. But I do want to ask, when you look at the earlier material from Paradise Belongs to You, and, or even Veronica Decides to Die or whatnot, do you look back at that with a different perspective now? Because there's such an evolution demonstrated throughout the longevity of Saturnus. So, like, do you almost like feel differently about this material, and how would you say on a technical level and on an emotional level it's evolved since then? Especially because I know that you've all played with other projects both before and in between, in a way. Like Brian, I still love the album that you did with The Loveless. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, how would you say the evolution has progressed constantly? It's a big question, I know.
It is. If we just like talk about the evolution, the progression of the band, I would say I don't feel that song. If we like pick 3 songs from Paradise Belongs to You and played them alongside the 3 songs from The Storm Within, I think they will not fall that far away from each other. Of course, there will be maybe a modern approach to the storm within, but it's also like 30 years after, almost 30 years. And there's also happened a lot about the technology and what technology you use on your guitars and the amplifiers and all that. But music-wise, I don't think if we kind of played like one Paradise song and one Storm Within and continued like that for 6 numbers, I don't think there will be like the biggest, how can I say, difference in because for us it's just music and doom and. So I'm not saying that our time have been standing still because that is certainly not the fact. Because I think we have developed in a good way and still like keeping our roots from back then. But yeah, I kind of missed the point. But I think you got it.
Yeah, no,
in my
absolutely.
explanation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Indy, when it comes to, because I know that you've known the band for a very long time and you've all personally known each other, you've been a fan, but you're playing The Storm Within and then you're going to have to play some of the earlier material. So is that almost going to have like a different emotional attachment as well? If you were to do like this sort of 30-year anniversary tour and you play Self Off of Paradise Belongs to You and the earlier material, would it almost feel differently, or maybe you would have a different attachment to that?
Not really, because I think that from the beginning I was always made to feel part of the whole. It was not like, okay, you're filling in this role now and that's what you do, and from this point forward that's where your value lies. It's also my ability to interpret what came before. So I think that's every time we get on stage and we play the older numbers, I'm there in the same place as everyone else is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fair enough. I wasn't there at the conception of that material, but when I'm up on stage, I have my own emotional attachment to them.
Yeah, I've always wondered when like a band, a new member comes in, if and this isn't like a dig or anything like that, but I was always wondering when you play like the earlier material, are you almost like that material's step guitarist in a way, like a stepfather or something like that to it?
See, that's the thing. I think that would be the case maybe in some bands, but I really feel like it relies heavily on the people you're sharing the stage with. You're sharing us with 24/7. You're staying at their homes. It's no longer just you're there for the moment on that stage. You're part of the life and the lifestyle of what the nature of the beast, basically. You're in there with everyone else in the trenches doing the same thing. Fair enough. I did, I paid my dues doing other, growing up in other projects and all that, but it doesn't mean that I don't know what it feels like to be there and to have gotten to that level or whatever it is, But when we're on stage, we're all sharing the same moment, and I think that's the bit that matters the most,
Absolutely. You all led me perfectly into the next question, actually. I have a few more questions for you, but, you know how to embrace a long song and know how to keep it engaging. I think that's a talent in itself. Sometimes, and this isn't a dig against, like, a lot of stoner or sludge or doom bands, but sometimes, when you're repeating the same riff for 18 minutes straight, sometimes, it can be a little tiresome. I'll just say that out there right now. But when you work on a song for a long extended period of time, does it make it a little bit more difficult to sort of capture a moment or maintain that moment in a way, or maintain the initial creative spark, if you will? Or is that not really an issue when you work on something for a long period of time?
I think
then there was silence.
Yeah.
I've got a little answer for that one, but I'm going to make it long because I'm so
long answers for a band that makes long songs. Go right ahead. I got.
How I view this is that, as when you're writing this material or when you're listening back to it, when everyone starts going, okay, guys, stop it. We'll all know, okay, the vibe from this point onwards, it's not feeling the same, because you want it to have, from the moment you play whatever riff or melody, from the moment you play that first note to the end of the phrase, the time you repeat it, you need it to have the same impact, if not more. So I think a good example that we've got off the new album is Chasing Ghosts. That end passage. It's pretty lengthy, and it does repeat, but it changes in dynamics. It gets more intense as it goes on. But we are technically revamping a melody and adding harmonies and orchestrations and things like that to it. Whereas if we played the same thing over and over and over again and not changing anything dynamically, then I think we could all say, okay, 2 minutes in, stop that, enough.
Yeah.
It also depends.
No.
It does. If you go, but if you're going for that, if you are going for a mood that is going to bring the listener down and in, make you feel like you're dragging that riff along the floor with them. If that's the intended intention, fine. But I don't think that's what we're going for here.
Yeah. Well, you led me perfectly into the final question. I want all three of you to answer this. I want to see who has the best or worst answer. This is the second to last question. How do you all know when a song is done? Who wants to start first?
Repeat, please.
How do you know when a song is done?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Brian?
Yeah.
Go on. I'm bored.
When it would lean now to the meetings we had in the pandemic time when we make the songs, and then we I think we all know when it's done. When you can feel this relief, when you touch the final note and say, okay, now it's done. For me, actually. So I don't know about you guys.
Okay. Can you guys top that one?
Yeah, it's it's a tough one, but I can say my approach to all the songs, also all the albums, of course when it's all the songs. For me, it's important to be a fan of your own things, your own songs, and that means every song. And no matter how long time they will go, or years. I know it's not in the composing time, but in general, it's important for me to still be a fan of the song because that tells me that the song is good enough. But if we're talking about how to like end a song and say now it's done, it's when you have those demo versions, for an example, when we compose, and when you can like rest in the song and still enjoy it without thinking maybe you could add a little end solo or whatever. But how can I say, there is just a time when the song tells you now it's enough, now I'm done. And if you're still a fan, like after a month of going and listening to it on the hi-fi, then the answer is there. I know it was a little complicated, circling, bending answer, but that's the best I can do.
It was a pretty good one. Indy, you in a way kind of just answered it in the last question, but if you want to put the cherry on top.
I think Thomas and Brian kind of nailed it. Together we all know when it's kind of finished, but me individually, I think Thomas said it really well. Like, the song tells you. You can keep going and adding and adding and adding. And I think that's the point when you know you're near the finish line, because when you've added, but then you know where to take those little bits away to make it feel like the listening experience is complete. Dynamically, if it's moved you through all the emotions that you've intended it to take you through, then we know, okay, it's complete. But if it feels like it's left you needing more, that's when we know that it's not complete. When we know that we've come out of that listening experience satisfied and gone, okay, nail in the coffin, done.
I appreciate
nail in the coffin.
I appreciated all of your answers. I thought that was very good. I better than when people say when it's mixed, because that's
when it's mixed.
Yeah. And going back to the emotion of the music as well, because you really know how to, like, again, the music really, it's given me goosebumps, it's given me chills, it's brought me to tears at times. It's a very, I feel like you really know how to make melancholia very beautiful in regards. But when darkness or melancholia or pain, your burdens are kind of like the source of inspiration for how you make music or how the lyrics are composed, does that maybe make the songwriting process just as painful in a way as it can be cathartic in a way? I've always said that when that agony is the source of inspiration, artists can sometimes become victimized by their own product.
I would say no. I would say in general, for all of us, we're in general kind of just big children. So we're kind of a happy bunch of people. but also in happy people we also have our dark sides. But I would not. For me, I personally I don't use like my dark sides or my light side for that matter into the music. It's like kind of the music that tells the atmosphere of which direction we are going, because um, I don't have a need to like I'm writing better in the night at 3 o'clock in the darkness, and I need to cut myself with a razor blade and drink a half a bottle of red wine or whatever to get into the real mood. It sounds really metal, but it's actually not. It's not how it is. It's yeah. It's I don't. Of course, I can hear and I know what you mean when you say the music is sad and sometimes, but when you say the music brought you to tears, I know that feeling myself, but it's also your own emotions mixed with the music. So actually, it's the music that calls to your emotions, and you have how can I say that connection with the music. Um, so how can I say we are not trying to compose music that needs to be sad or how can I say dark. It's just the way of how can I say it's just the way of how we enjoy music, because in the end, and I've said that a million times and they will probably laugh now, but it's all about emotions.
Yeah. I mean, just because, well, to quote
It's true.
to quote Veronica Decides to Die, just because it's a
Yeah.
cliche doesn't mean it isn't true. So
No.
so
Exactly.
yep. Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm so glad I got to use that in this interview. And you let me
Yeah.
you let me perfectly into the final question. Because when you are playing this material live, or you know, when people are interpreting in the music, when you bring the music into the world for people to experience, and this can mainly go more so for when you play live and people are resonating with it, and you know, you're sharing that energy. Does the music have different emotional context or different meaning to you when people interpret it in their own way or experience it in a live show and you're interacting with the crowd for them to experience it?
For sure, for sure. I've seen people cry to the music. I have actually been like hugging people in the show, because I could see they have their moment of something that was going on in their life, or maybe they turned back time for like a broken relationship or whatever. It could be a thousand things. Or but I have actually been down to people and like interacting with them, because I know. We are also people with emotions, and we all know what music can do to people, and we also we all have that special song that reminds us of maybe our first real girlfriend, and of the first time our hearts were broken or whatever. And when we hear that song, maybe that can kind of bring tears of joy, or it can also bring tears of sadness. And yeah, now I'm going out that twisty bendy road again with
Please,
all these
please,
answers.
please.
But yeah. But yeah, but we are, yeah, we actually like to see that people is into the music, and we can see they get emotional. And actually, I think we see a lot. That is when a pair comes to a concert, there is a lot of girls in our shows, and of course many of them bring their boyfriends, or the boyfriend one or the other way. But we can see the boys are in the beginning of the show is like more like kind of it's like
macho, yeah.
standing like this.
Yeah.
But we can see the further the progression of the show is going, we can see now he starts to like hold his hands over her, by maybe kiss her on the cheek or whatever, and we can see that they're getting more and more soft. And so yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, as here in New York, you should see it when it's the other way around, when the boyfriend brings his girlfriend to a New York City hardcore show.
Yeah,
You know,
really?
I've seen it sometimes where like it's the girl's first hardcore show, and you know she's a little intimidated, and then like 5 songs in, she's in the pit smashing people in their face. It's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so all the tough guys are being soft at the Saturnus show.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I've played some of the emo music for like the most macho guys, and they'll tell me being like, "Yeah, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, I like My Chemical Romance." So before we go, I want to thank all of you so much for your time. Thank you so much for a great conversation, and most of all, thank you for this amazing new album, The Storm Within. Is there just anything else with Saturnus you all would like to promote in terms of shows coming up? What else we could be expecting for the future? Hopefully a U.S. tour somewhere in the
Hopefully, yeah.
in the works. Anything you're allowed to say at the moment. This will be uploaded by midnight, so any shows planned for 2025, don't plug them here.
Yeah. But Thomas, you can say the thing you said on at Copenhagen.
Ah.
You remember?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I say so much shit. You have already heard it in this interview.
I love it.
Yeah, we have a Danish show coming up here, Metal Magic Festival, and we have the Prophecy Festival together with the November Stool from Chicago, and we also have a Danish show with them with November Stool in Copenhagen. We don't know where yet, but it's already booked. Yeah, and then we have some European tours coming, and we have a few festivals coming. We have the Brutal Assault Festival in the Czech Republic, and we have a festival in Leipzig in Germany. And that's about it. Then we have an autumn European tour coming up. But there will be some more news about that in the near future. And we are working on South America next year, hopefully. And in that matter, that would be awesome to come back to America, and especially New York again.
Yeah.
We'd love to come to New York again.
We would love to have you here. We'd be so stoked to have you here. You know, there's a whole scene here, you know, like a melodic death metal movement here that holds a lot of you guys and, you know, your Doom peers as inspirations. So it would be
that's cool.
It would be a great show. And shout out to Prophecy as well. I love that whole roster of Prophecy. I interviewed Dimna Latva yesterday, a great band on the bill as well. So shout out to them.
But actually, I would say I know it has nothing to do with this, but I think I've actually seen a good, like a new beginning from many American bands. We have this modern death metal thing going on with 200 stab wounds, Tombstoner and Creeping Death and Frozen Soul, and all those kinds of bands. That's really, really lovely. I know it's not Doom, but
melodic death metal in New York has its own scene. If you look up bands like Solemn Vision, you look up bands like Breath of the Moor, you look up a lot. This is like a brand new melodic death metal scene. New York is trying to be like Sweden in a way, with its sort of like
2000s and 90s.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
And you know what? It's working. So shout out to, you know, Dead City Crown, Solemn Vision, all these bands. They're kick ass.
I love that stuff. I grew up on it. So.
Well, you all have homework. Check out those bands. Shameless plug for our local underground scene. But thank you guys so much, everybody. We are here with Saturnus, The Storm Within, out now on Prophecy. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely.